Good morning, everyone. Is everyone in? Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Meet the Agency session at XpoNorth. Clive Gillman from Creative Scotland is due to chair this session. He'll be with us shortly. He's just had some technical issues joining it, but I'm Alison Turnbull, Director of Development and Partnership at Historic Environment Scotland. So how the session's going to run today is you'll get an opportunity to hear from myself, from Joe Traynor at Museums Galleries Scotland, and also from Clive at Creative Scotland. Unfortunately, Chris from VisitScotland's unable to be with us today. We're each going to do a 10-minute presentation, and then there'll be the opportunities for you to ask us questions. And we'd like to make this as interactive as possible in this virtual environment. So I'm just going to kick off with my own presentation at the moment. Right, so I'm hoping you can all see my screen here. So as I said, I am Director of Development and Partnership, and what that role covers is research, policy, international working, communities, partnership and equalities. And a common feature of how my directorate works is we're very small, but we work across HES as an organisation, but we've also got strong external contacts, and we provide a strategic approach to key issues, but support agencies on the ground. And what we like to try and do is to create space for thinking about key issues. So today I'm going to give you that overview of HES, but also look at how we work with the creative industries and connect within that to our response to COVID-19. So this is a definition for HES as an organisation. We're a charity, which is important, and we're the lead agency for the historic environment. We take a very broad definition of the historic environment, that it's everything created by people over time, but it's also tangible and intangible. So it can be a place, an idea, or an object, but also we run over 330 sites. So
Alison, sorry to interrupt you. Your screen isn't quite been shared yet.
Oh, isn't it? So can people hear me? Thanks for interrupting, Joe. Is it shared? I am screen sharing now. Can you see it now, Joe?
Sorry, I'm on mute. Yeah, absolutely can see it now.
Apologies for everyone. That is multiple technical issues today. So that's the definition for HES. And what I wanted to follow up by saying on that is it's about, sorry, I've gone through several slides now. I'll go back previous. Apologies. Right, so as I said, it's not just about the present and the current, it's also about the future. Now, moving on to my next slide, I've got a couple of slides up here which are looking at Historic Environment Scotland in numbers. And you'll see from this slide, there's quite a strong focus on our visitor offer, which is virtual at the moment, but it also looks at our connections to markets. We've got members, we run events, and we've also got a grants scheme, which I'll talk a little bit about later. And this one, it shows we've got an archive as well. We've got a strong digital offer, and we're a skills provider. So this is a screenshot of our grant scheme. For any of our grants, the first stage is to fill in an expression of interest. At the moment, a lot of our grant schemes are either paused or closed, but I wanted to highlight two that are open that might be of interest to this audience. So the first is the Historic Environment Repair Grant, which supports with the conservation and repair for buildings, places of worship and historic monuments. So that scheme's open and will close by the end of December. And also the Historic Environment Support Fund. So the application currently for this closes at the end of July, but it's a one-off fund to support one-off heritage events, small projects and training. So if you're interested in that, there's not much time, and please fill in the expression of interest. So I wanted to move on to how creative industries fit with our work. Last year, HES launched Heritage for All, which is our corporate plan, which was an ambitious 10-year plan with 5 key outcomes. My directorate led on the work of this, and how we took it forward was actually trying to connect with groups that we hadn't connected with previously. And we ran quite a lot of engagement sessions prior to starting drafting. And why this is relevant for the creative industries in this audience, what came through really strongly was the importance of heritage and Scotland's story. And as a result of this, we created this outcome around creativity, and that historic environment inspires a creative and vibrant Scotland. So this is something we all know from novels, music, etc. But often that connection seems to be overlooked, and creativity and heritage seem to be considered separately. So another relevant connection for this is around creativity, inspiring creative thought and practice as well. And I think that's going to be central to all of our work driving it forward. So as a result of that, has started to develop a program of work. And one of my colleagues who was involved in this, I think, is on the call at the moment. And we actually wanted to understand what work HES had done, how could we contribute. We wanted to connect with organisations that we hadn't connected with previously. So we did some internal mapping in HES to see how we'd supported creative industries. We ran a sprint with Clive and Co at Creative Scotland to look at how we might work together in possible projects. And we also started a conversation with Ian Hamilton and High and how we could work together. And I'd say that has resulted in holding this session. So these are some examples here of, sorry, I'll just go back, apologies. Examples of work that we have commissioned from the creative industries. So first is the Carlaverock Castle Quest app, which is a gaming app, and we've got 2 events we held. So one was the Edinburgh Castle of Light, and the other is the Spotlight on Mary that we held at Craigmillar Castle. So some of you might be aware of that. So this is where we get into the year of 2 halves, because we plan to take forward quite a lot of work this year, and then we've had this current situation. So I'd say the 3 projects I've got here are partially on hold, or that one of them is actually being taken forward. So we were a successful Creative Informatics Challenge holder. Some of you might be aware of that project. We've got a project around a time telescope option, and we're looking to appoint someone for that, but that will be happening next month. The collaboration with High we see is really important going forward. There's the XpoNorth Heritage Program, and we're also being part of this conference. But I think this year, let's see what happens after this. I think there'll be great opportunities to work together. And we've also got a 3rd project connecting retail and our makers. So it's important to, I guess, look a little bit at our response to COVID at the moment and where we see creative industries fitting in, particularly on the way forward. So we've got a 6-month action plan at the moment, and contributing to XpoNorth Heritage is part of that. And I think that's really important because there's a hook in that to the creative industries. We've got pages on our website about our response to COVID. We're working with Built Environment Forum Scotland on a sector-wide approach to heritage recovery in this current environment. And these events are live. There are two coming up in the next couple of weeks, one on statutory and policy and one on education and research. So those are ones I'd strongly recommend you take part. We're about to publish a resumption plan for our sites, and also we've got a further 6-month plan. But my directorate's heading up work on reimagining and the futures. And this is where I see creative industries contributing quite strongly to the work on recovery and what the future will look at. I think this situation's raised a range of issues of how we currently work with communities, but also the centrality of culture and heritage to economic recovery. And some of you will have seen the advisory group on economic recovery report to the Scottish Government that was published on Monday. But either way, as HERS, we see the importance of creative industries, working with creative industries as a central strand of our work going forward. It's the fastest growing sector, but in this uncertain time, we need creative thought, we need reimagining about our role. And for HERS, it's a matter of thinking about what can we support and what are opportunities for collaboration. So I'm quite happy to make my slides available afterwards, but I've just got a couple of links there to key areas I've spoken about and key issues. And then I've got my contact details and everything there. So that's it from me. Looking forward to hearing your questions. I see Clive's on the call, so I will hand back to him. Thank you.
Right, now, am I working? Am I live? Alison, please nod. Yes, fabulous, thank you. Yeah, hi everyone. Apologies for a slightly delayed entrance to this particular show. I seem to have a problem getting through the Zoom wall, but I'm in now. So I missed, obviously, the very beginning, the introductions. I think the intention is that we will be spending 10 minutes with each of the presenters. We are down one presenter. I think that might have been mentioned perhaps. Chris from Visit Scotland is not able to join us, so it's going to be myself, Alison, and Joe. You've heard from Alison. I'm kind of hoping Joe is ready to go next. And if that is the case, I'll hand over to Joe if you want to pick up the baton.
Brilliant, thanks Clive. Yeah, I am ready to go. I'll just find my slides and we can crack on. Can everybody see? Oh. No, you can just see me.
No, we're getting your slides, Joe.
Oh, yeah, okay. Brilliant. So nice to virtually meet everybody. It's really lovely to be here with colleagues and partners. It's really lovely event to really share what Museums Galleries Scotland do. So I am Joe Traynor. I'm Head of Museum Development at Museums Galleries Scotland. And I'm just going to spend 10 minutes just really telling you what we do. And then I'm really happy to answer any questions as we progress. So Museums Galleries Scotland is a national development body for Scotland's museums and galleries. We support 412 museums and galleries at the moment, and that list kind of fluctuates at the moment. It's increasing. We provide funding advice, advocacy, workforce development, partnership development. An example of that is today's session, and standards as well, the accreditation and recognition schemes. And we also develop with the sector the National Strategy for Scotland's Museums and Galleries. That is due to end in 2022. And we've just finished and published this year the final delivery plan against that national strategy. The national strategy has 6 really high-level aims. They're really still relevant, even though the original strategy was published in 2012. So it's been very successful in terms of supporting the sector to develop together with us to achieve the aims. The delivery plan runs from 2020 to 22, and the areas of work that MGS are really focused on at the moment are sector partnerships, funding, you'll be relieved to know, advice and knowledge sharing, and impact and advocacy. We've also highlighted 4 areas that we would like to see as focus for the sector for Scotland's museums and galleries, and they're around resilience, workforce development, climate, and digital capacity. I don't think we're the only organisation to look at those areas as priorities, and it's again a really nice opportunity to work together with other people to make sure that we're really impacting on the sector and the ground. And this is where our partnership with HI really comes from. It's about that resilience. It's about looking at how museums and galleries can really tap into creative industries and work together to really make an impact. Accreditation is the standard that probably most of you will know. We manage that standard on behalf of a UK-wide partnership in Scotland, and we have 257 accredited museums just now. It is the industry standard, so it does take a bit of effort, and it does take a bit of help from us every now and again, and we're really happy to provide that. So if you're interested in that scheme, or you'd like to hear more about it, or have help with it, then please do let us know. We also manage a recognition scheme, and that's really quite like the designation scheme in England in many ways. And we have 50 recognised collections, and those are collections, museum and gallery collections that are distributed throughout Scotland, but are nationally significant, so could actually belong to the national museums and galleries. And that's how we look at them. We also provide funding. We usually provide 5 levels of funding. We use the Achieving Accreditation Fund to support people who would like to progress towards accreditation. We have a small project fund, an equipment fund, and a development grants, and then finally we have the recognition fund as well. So we do hopefully do a lot to support museums throughout Scotland, and the slide here will show you the concentration of museums as we go forward. Yeah, you'll see they're absolutely everywhere. We might have missed a couple off because, as I say, our list has been updated all the time. You know that we provide a major role in tourism and the economy. We know that. We're capturing that on behalf of the sector to advocate. And it's one of the most important reasons that tourists and visitors come to Scotland. So it's, you know, we are really key to Scotland's success. This is how the local authority, this is how the 412 museums and galleries break down. And you'll see the vast majority are independent museums. But just a little bit of background there for you. So I've talked about the national strategy and accreditation and recognition. I just would like to mention, as we go forward, funding in terms of COVID, and we've stopped all of our grant schemes just now. We are really looking at how we support the sector going forward. So we've developed an urgent response fund, and that for the first time provides core funding to museums and galleries. The criteria is that those galleries and museums must be in significant difficulty imminently. We have a digital resilience fund, which is about to close, but will allow grants for up to 3,000 for accredited and non-accredited museums to purchase anything ICT related, so that people can communicate and carry on their work. We're just about to launch an adaptation fund, and that is for museums and galleries to enable them to reopen. Excuse me, I hope I didn't deafen everybody there. So we're doing our best to be as agile as possible for the sector to just make sure that the sector has a fighting chance of surviving and thriving going forward. We also provide advice. We have the Knowledge Exchange Programme, which is a peer-led exchange programme, really. And we host that and develop themes with the sector to make sure that we're sharing as much knowledge and good practice as possible. Obviously, within COVID, we have real concerns about people's well-being, so we've included some well-being sessions in that, and also in our museum stand-up sessions, which are very informal sessions that will just excuse me a second. Sorry about that. Will enable people to get together and swap experiences of how they're feeling in COVID and what's going on there. We also have 2 National Lottery Heritage projects that are about to come live. We have a forums project which will support geographical forums and enable them to really become resilient in terms of business planning, financial strategies, and that will be on a partnership level. And there will also be funding available associated with that project from autumn. So please do look out for that. And we have a business support project, again, coming online, and that's for individual museums and galleries to really look at how leadership is provided and board development is provided, and all other kinds of real business support to enable the sector to become even more resilient. And I feel like this is probably a really useful time for those funds to come live. So do contact us if you'd like any more information. Just in terms of moving on to skills, we have loads of things going on with skills. And again, we work with partners and with the sector to develop new programs and to really look at how we support individuals and institutions. So we've got modern apprenticeships, and at the moment we've just about to go live with a digital marketing modern apprenticeship qualification. So please do contact us if you'd like any more information on that. We have the SVQ in Museums and Galleries Studies, which we're currently offering. We have leadership qualifications and we have board development qualifications. So those are the formal aspects of our workforce development strategy, and we brand that as Skills Academy. So please do have a look for that on our website. We're also involved in leading 2 projects related to the culture strategy. One is around training volunteers and giving them formal qualifications. And the other is around working with schools in areas of multiple deprivation and making sure that those children and young people are aware of creative and cultural careers. So again, it feeds really well into this kind of session. And the last thing, and then I'll stop talking and there may be questions, is around advocacy, and really just to point out that we've tried to be as agile as every other heritage organisation here has in terms of reacting to COVID. We work with HES and BEFS on the CHERF group. We've worked with the Scottish Government on providing guidance on reopening. We're hosting parliamentary events annually, so there will be hopefully one in November. We're looking at economic and social impact, because what we're finding is that lots of museums are looking ahead to the future and looking at how they might be able to articulate the impact in terms of more difficult funding climates coming. So we're looking at that, and we'd really be very happy to develop that with you. We're working with local authority leaders to ensure that we're supporting local authority museums as well as the independent sector. And we also work with a range of partners, our stakeholder group, to make sure that we're doing the very best that we can for the museums and galleries in Scotland. And I think that is me. So Yes. Any questions, please do shout.
Fab. Thank you, Joe. That was great. I've invited people to drop questions into the chat box alongside this as well as we go along, so that we can pick up on those once we've completed presentations. So we'll just kind of keep an eye out for those. And I think it's over to me now to begin the process of sharing my presentation. So if you bear with me a second, I will share my screen. Right, now I'm working on the basis you can see my screen. I have no idea if you are or not, because I've lost the window that shows me any confirmation of that. So I'll go through the presentation, see how we get on. Okay, this was a slightly tricky task last night, because I started off with a slide pack that had about 112 slides in it, and I committed to try and reduce them down to 5 slides, which I'm sure you'll all be very pleased to know. So it's a bit of a canter through who we are and what we do. Just to begin with, what is Creative Scotland? We've been doing quite a lot of work over the last year, defining exactly who we are, what we're here to do, and who we are here to support and serve. And this is the current statements that we're working with. We are defining ourselves as the national body for creative development, which I think obviously fits in alongside HES, as you've heard, and obviously Museums, Galleries Scotland, and the different roles that we all perform. What we want to see is creative activity is vibrant, valued, and experienced by everyone, and inclusive Scotland. And I think this reflects the fact that we are increasingly identifying that we need to be very, very active in terms of addressing the equality, diversity, and inclusion agenda. And this will come through quite strongly, I think, in some of our future work.
Hello, Clive?
Yes.
Sorry, it's Paul here to butt in and interrupt you. You haven't confirmed your screen share, so no one can see your screen at the moment.
Apologies. Okay, let me just go back to that then. Okay, I'm clicking on the share button where it says share my screen, and it is not doing it, I take it.
Yep, sorry, no, we're not seeing it. So if you click share screen, you should have to confirm it as well, I think.
Let me, yeah, no, it's not actually offering me a confirmation button for that at all. It's just, I've opened up the share your screen. It shows me a version of my screen in the window. Asks me if I want to share my entire screen, application window, or Chrome tab. I'm clicking on share entire screen, and nothing further seems to be happening.
Okay, I'll look into that and get back to you. Sorry about that.
Let me try application window.
Yeah, that's good.
Is that working now?
Clive, yeah.
Thank you all. Apologies for that. Let me go through that then. So, still working? All good?
All
Let me
good,
start
Clive.
again. Fabulous, thank you. Creative Scotland is the national body for creative development. You would have heard me say this already, but you can see the words now. We want to see creative activities vibrant, valued, and experienced by everyone in an inclusive Scotland, and that we're here to enable creative people, communities, places, and activity to thrive. So I guess what we're saying is that we're interested in creativity, how people use creativity, how they make it work for themselves, and how that helps to create a rich and diverse culture for Scotland. Fundamentally, to how we achieve that, we obviously distribute funding. Some of that funding comes from Scottish Government and some comes from the National Lottery. And so what I was going to do is just take you through some of the ways in which we do that. we manage our approach to achieving our purpose through a number of different organisational directorates. Just to explain these, first one, arts and engagement, which includes broadly creative learning, dance, literature, music, theatre and visual arts. And that forms the largest part of our organisation. It's also covers perhaps the most visible parts of our activity. We then have our Creative Industries Directorate, which is the one that I look after. And the principal focus there is on sustainable creative businesses. And we also have sectoral expertise around craft, design and digital as art forms as well as creative businesses. We then have a strategy team who focus on place and communities, equality, diversity and inclusion and research. And then we also have Screen Scotland, which is the new agency that's been set up to operate under the directorship of Creative Scotland. So it's part of Creative Scotland, but it's an independent brand with its own team taking forward initiatives that are designed to support the development of Screen in Scotland. And Screen Scotland also functions as a partnership body, so it has input from the enterprise agencies, from the skills agencies across Scotland. We also have areas of our work that cover things like European partnerships with the Creative Europe desk, and we do work around things like location support activity for incoming productions, and partnership work with things like the Edinburgh Festivals and the Momentum programme, which brings overseas delegates to the UK. So there's a whole range of other aspects, but this is the core of how we function. So how do we help things to happen? Well, one of the key things is obviously funding and the disbursement of funds. We have essentially three routes into getting funding from us. By far the biggest one is regular funding, and that covers support for a core infrastructure of creative and cultural organisations. Currently that operates on a 3-year cycle, and within that we have currently 121 organisations that are supported through that route. We then have open funding, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second, but essentially open funding has been reconfigured to respond to the COVID-19 shutdown. I'll tell you a little bit more about how that works in a second. And then thirdly, we have a number of targeted development funding programs which are focused on specific kinds of activity. And a lot of that is done according to our strategy cycles, but also a lot of it is done around specific national imperatives. So we have things like Youth Music Initiative, which is a targeted funding program which focuses on supporting young people in developing musical skills. But then also we have targeted funding around creative industries development, which is principally focused on interventions that help to grow sustainable creative businesses, and that tends to be place-based or subsectoral based. So it's not necessarily working directly with businesses, but it's working with other agencies who are helping to develop the economic potential of creative and cultural activity. What does that look like? In terms of the last year that we've reported on, which is 2018-19, we have disbursed about £80.5 million to 1,257 people. The core part of that, as I mentioned before, is the RFO funding, which is about £34.5 million a year. That goes out to, I think, as I said before, the 121 organisations, which we have a long-term commitment to. But beyond that, there's a lot of other organisations and individuals that we support through other funding routes. And the full details of this, I won't talk you through all of the numbers, but essentially, we look to get about £10.5 million out each year through open funding over and above the regular funding, and then we have about another £30 million that goes out through targeted routes, part of which is the support directly for the screen sector and screen production activity. So there's a variety of ways in to get support. The thing I was going to mention before relates to open access funding. The main route for that has in the past always been something called open project funding, and that has been for project support, where you could get an award of up to £100,000 for a time-limited project, It was a rolling programme of support set against a budget of around about 10.5 million, as I mentioned. It's currently been reconfigured in order to address what we see as being the challenges in relation to the COVID-19 shutdown. So a lot of it is now focused on supporting people to consider how they can take forward their forms of practice in the light of the shutdown, especially given that a lot of audience-facing activities are now severely limited by the shutdown. So there are full details of that on our website, and that is a programme that we pulled together quite quickly post-shutdown, and it's being revised as I speak at the moment, so there will be a slightly updated version of that appearing shortly. But essentially that's our key available fund at the moment. The current regular funding cycle is due to complete next year, but we're looking to have a year's extension of that, hopefully, which will mean that whatever we do next in terms of regular funding will be from April 2022. That's the current intention anyway. This is our opportunities website, and I often include this in presentations because this is one of the key parts of our offer. There are many thousands of opportunities that appear within Scotland for the creative and cultural sector, and not all of them are delivered directly through us and through our own funding routes, but a lot of them are publicised through our opportunities website. So I would recommend that if you are interested in trying to find out what's going on and trying to access opportunities, the opportunities site is a really great place to start off with. And you can obviously filter these opportunities. Like I say, there are many thousands of them that pass through, all the way from residency opportunities to commissions through to job opportunities. So this is a really key point for people to find out what's going on. And again, we are looking to refine and develop this over the coming year so that it can be it can serve better the needs of people that are trying to access those opportunities. And then lastly, this is me, this is my email address. If anybody is interested in finding out more about, especially about our work in the creative industries, do contact me. Always happy to speak. We have a small team of 7 of us in the creative industries team. We may not be able to respond as quickly as we might hope, especially at the moment where we're doing a lot of work trying to get money out the door to address the particular issues of the COVID-19 shutdown. But yeah, that's me, and let's move on to the Q&A. Okay. So, thank you. Now let's see what we've got in terms of the questions. Just as I'm going through the questions, can I maybe invite my colleagues Alison and Joe just to chip back in and see if there's any thoughts that they have that hopefully they've been looking at the chat that they want to respond to.
It seems that Kate Deans has been doing a wonderful job in regards to Scotland and publicising. So I don't know if the chat will be available afterwards as well, because it seems there's some passing on of contacts. So that might be helpful for participants.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, Kate, you're doing a great job there. Thank you. So, Creative Europe, Kate, yes. Oh, yeah, lots of conversation there about Creative Europe. And hopefully Kate's picking up on that. Yes, you seem to be. Okay, so, oh, actually, sorry, we also have the Q&As. So as well as the chat box, which I think is standard within the Zoom, we've got a Q&A one as well, so I've been asked to direct people to that as well. And yeah, thank you. We have a question that's come in from an anonymous attendee saying, is diversity important to achieve your ambitions? Can all the support bodies build upon join-up initiatives to make a meaningful difference across cultural and creative sectors? Yeah, a really important question. Thank you. Yes, I think probably the answer to most of the challenges that we face on all levels at the moment is probably diversity, and I think it's obviously come very much to the fore recently because of particular circumstances around the world. But those issues are always there, and I think we now have an opportunity to address them head on. I think in terms of the work that we do at Creative Scotland, we have an equality, diversity and inclusion team, but there is no sense in which the issues that relate to addressing equality and diversity are limited to the work of that team. It's something that is important across everything that we do. I think we still have some way to go in terms of truly addressing that. And I think one of the big challenges that we have is that the legacy of cultural activity that tends to dominate our understanding of what represents culture is quite culturally specific, and there is a need to address that and start to think about how we can make that more culturally inclusive and more representative of diverse voices across our society. I don't know, Joe and Alison, do you want to chip in response to that question?
You go, Alison.
Yeah, so I would wholeheartedly agree with all of that. And part of the reason we took the approach we did to develop our corporate plan was to engage with groups that we hadn't previously engaged with. And we thought that is an absolute priority for us. So yes, we did that for that piece of work, but that is an ongoing way we're working. Equalities, there's an equalities manager who sits within my team, but it's not just one person's remit. It has to be reflected in everything we're doing. So one piece of work we're involved in at the moment is taking a programmatic approach to equalities and looking at our existing activities and how we can build that in. The second part of your question in regards to joining up, Scotland's a small place, and we do currently all work together, but I think that's more important going forward. Certainly today, I've sent 2 emails already to 2 of Clive's colleagues, but I think that may I know a lot of people out there will not distinguish between us as individual bodies, so it's really important that we connect. And one piece of work involved in with both Creative Scotland and MGS, which is relevant to your particular question as well, is a scoping project around intangible cultural heritage in Scotland. And I think that gives us an opportunity, because that is looking at intangible heritage, not only Scottish, but it's actually in Scotland. And I think that gives us a sort of grassroots way to engage with diversity issues as well. So I'll just hand to Joe.
Thanks.
Yeah, again, echoing both my colleagues in what they've been saying. Our equality for us is very integrated across everything we do, and that's the way that we like to work. Of course, everybody has more to do, everybody. We are really working very hard to diversify the museum workforce through modern apprenticeships and vocational qualifications, because we realise that, for example, socioeconomic issues are a real barrier to people joining the museum workforce. We're looking very hard at board diversity to make sure that there's a real representation of communities across Scotland there. The Character Matters report that was published actually now quite a few years ago is really integral into all of our work here, in terms of really making sure that the museum profession and the collections that the museums and galleries hold are representative of communities. We're working very closely with UK partners around restitution guidelines. We have working very, very closely with the MA on decolonisation agendas. We are looking at the museum workforce the museum workforce skills, and are working very closely with groups like Museum Detox, Museums as Muck, and the LGBTQ+ Museum Professionals Network to set up some programs of training, which will be coming online very soon, to enable museum people and gallery people to access their collections in a new way, to be able to represent their communities. So it's really high up on our agenda.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know who it was that put that question, but I'd be interested to hear whether or not you have a particular sense of what needs to be done across the bodies, and whether or not there are things that we're currently not doing that we might be able to do better. So yeah, it'd be good to kind of hear more on that. We've got another question from Sandra Davison, which is hopefully quite straightforward to respond to. Do you link up with Visit Scotland to support theme years? I think, I guess from my perspective, yes, we have done. We've probably done it slightly differently depending on the theme, because some of the themes align much more clearly and obviously with work that we've been doing, certainly at Creative Scotland. And I personally had a lot of involvement with the year of innovation, architecture and design. And I know we've been talking quite a lot about Scotland Stories. I think the Coast and Rivers one may be less so from our perspective, even though there's definitely been projects that we have been involved in that have come through with that as well. But I expect maybe Jo and Alison, you've had more involvement. Do you want to say anything about that?
I haven't personally, but people on our marketing team work very closely. We've got various people on all the themed years groups. Like Clive, I think it depends on the topic. So I'm personally very, very interested in storytelling, and I think that's a great opportunity for all of us in this sector as well. But you may have noticed in my sort of flashing slides that we did have a fund open to support activity around Year of Coast and Water. So yes, we do work very closely with Visit Scotland on the themed years and support them in that way. So I'll hand to...
Yes, we actually meet with Visit Scotland every month to talk about how museums integrate into Scotland's tourism offer. But in terms of the themed years, Lucy Cassott is on the steering group for the Visit Scotland Years of, and my senior partnerships manager is on the project group to develop the project further. So we do engage really quite heavily with Visit Scotland around themed years, and we do try and ensure that our funding for that year or for that period of years, as I think it's going to be for the next well, the current theme, marries up to what Visit Scotland's asking museums and galleries to offer. So if there's a Year of Coast and Waters, for example, then we'll make sure that we're pushing it, but we'll also make sure that we're funding projects to do with that too.
Thanks. And Sandra, you've mentioned that you were thinking about Scotland Stories, and I think, am I right in thinking that's been put back a year as well? That was my understanding, and I think some of my colleagues are more closely involved with that than I am. But yes, certainly there's a strong willingness to engage with those, and I think certainly Scotland's Stories is a really interesting one, and I think has got great potential. So. Okay, now there's a question come in. With likely less money for commissioning and from standard funding, how can the heritage sector expect to utilise products and services from our creative industries? Is the approach to utilise R&D opportunities and challenges? Creative industries can definitely contribute, but they are businesses, so can't do for free. Yes, it's kind of a really interesting question, that, because obviously our conception of the creative industries is often that it is the audience-facing side of things. It's about the presentation of performances, or music, theatre, visual arts activity. But obviously, the creative industries extends a lot into design, into solutions that can be developed to achieve ends through a service approach as well. So I think. And if I can take the liberty of maybe wrapping this up into a slightly different question as well, which is as we've been through the COVID-19 shutdown, and we are now looking to see how we can build a recovery out of that. What do we think the relationship can be between the creative industries sector, as if you like, providing services and also providing content, in terms of meeting what we think that new normal is going to look like within both, I guess, museums and galleries and within the historic environment? Joe, you're on my screen. Do you want to have a go at that one?
Thanks so much, Clive. I was just thinking about this quite carefully, because I think there's a real synergy. I mean, I don't think that heritage and culture and creative industries are separate, and certainly they're not in the National Culture Strategy as separate. They're considered as part of a strategic body of work, and I think there's a real synergy between all the different elements of creative industries and, for example, museums and galleries, and there's a real opportunity to develop really mutually beneficial reciprocal relationships. Look at the V&A, which is a museum of design. It's done exhibitions on computer games, video games, or whatever the cool kids call them nowadays, because I have no idea. There's a real symbiosis and a real energy that could be enhanced and exploited, that will be of mutual benefit, I think. So it's maybe not about charging each other for a thing. It's maybe, I don't know, displaying somebody's work through an exhibition, or becoming involved in a school program around the design of sewing machines for children. There is so much that we can do together. And I think that if money is needed, then there are people like Museums, Galleries Scotland who can provide that project funding. So, let's use that project funding to establish new ways of working as well, so that they can then be taken forward and benefit everybody.
Alison,
I'm probably going to echo a lot of what everyone said. So, whilst I said a lot of the priority for HES at the moment has been getting our sites reopened, has been focusing sort of on the now or the immediate, I think we need to think about the future, and also to put it's crucial we put the stepping stones in place now to get there. So there is this opportunity of a crisis, but as Joe and Clive had said, collaboration is absolutely essential going forward. I think it's collaboration with organisations who haven't collaborated previously, and I think also what this crisis has thrown up is doing things differently. It's not doing things the way that we've done, and I do agree about the R&D opportunity, but also I don't see the sectors as diverse and distinct. But I think a lot of this thinking is starting already, and maybe it's because we're in quasi lockdown at the moment, but there's probably a space we need to get where we can share some of this thinking and move forward together. So thanks.
So what do you think about the post-COVID-19 world then? Is the approach within your two organisations about a return to normal, or is it about a new kind of normal? What does that new normal look like for you?
I think we're developing what the new normal looks like. I think just as this is a personal reflection, we moved very suddenly to lockdown and this way of working, and everyone used the hackneyed phrase that this is a marathon and not a sprint, but in actual fact it has felt like a sprint, and there have been a lot of immediate issues. So one thing I think is quite important at the moment is almost to take a pause. It's great, there's been so much research, there's so much reflection out there, but I think it is a matter of learning from this as well. There's probably some quite hard, difficult lessons that we've all got to step back and learn from.
Yeah, just to echo, I think we are still developing, and I think post-COVID will go on for quite a long time as we adjust to whatever that new way of living might be, which is going to be really interesting. I think it's thrown up a lot of opportunities, as well as been very sad for some people. But in terms of workplaces, it's conferences like this. We can do it from the comfort of our own attics or whiskey collections or whatever. You know,
yeah, I've
without
noticed
having to,
Alison's collection there too.
I'm just envy.
Yeah,
Envy. It's
yeah.
envy.
There's more.
Yeah. It's you know, we can do that without traveling, which is also having an impact on climate, you know. So all of these things have of mutual benefit. I'm loving not having to commute to Edinburgh every day from Glasgow. So for me, I suppose my well-being's improved, and it's, you know, and that will be the same for a lot of other people. You know, I don't think you can always replace face-to-face chatting or you know, that kind of networking, but actually, in some ways, this has held a mirror up to society, I think, and said, "Are you doing it right?"
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a very rambly, waffly answer.
Do you think we might see the growth of ideas like the Eco Museum? So actually things that are more localized, slightly more anarchic almost, that are owned and managed and representative of communities and not necessarily operating within a more authoritative environment. Do you think, yeah?
I think what just overnight, what's international, what's regional, what's local has just been absolutely thrown up, and also what I think values, what matter to people. Look at how people respond to the NHS. So and also all of us sort of during the height of lockdown probably developed a very different relationship with our local area. So one joke I made is I'm now a social member of a golf club near me because I was there so often. I'm not into golf, but I was there so often in lockdown. The space became very important. There was a connection. It felt an important part of my community engagement. So I do, even though there are eco museums, but I think a lot of this, how you work, what mattered, all of that has been thrown up, and I think it's a matter of sort of, I mean, Joe describing his commute and how he works. This is the reality we're in, and learning from that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
In terms of
Yeah,
museums, absolutely.
Sorry, Joe, yeah.
No, I always have something to say. Sorry, everybody. I think that it's really interesting because it's kind of a community sector-led movement, and that museum systems are still trying to catch up with that. So that's going to be really interesting. But it's one way forward. You know, we are seeing people that are going to have massive economic difficulty in terms of in terms of furlough ending, in terms of local authority grants being cut, in terms of you know, having no visitors for a whole season. So it's going to be really, really difficult for people. So there is that element, you know, that we're really looking at the moment. And I suppose that's why, although we said right at the beginning of our COVID-19 response we were going to have 3 phases, we're very much delaying the 3rd phase because MTS isn't sure how long those financial difficulties are going to last. It will be a new way of working. It might be a new sector as well. You know, it's going to be a period of massive change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, absolutely. There was a comment just coming in, just saying putting conferences like this online is a great way to broaden an audience and widen the community engaged. It's kind of an interesting idea because I think I don't know how sophisticated we are yet at these tools, and obviously my own particular experience over the last hour has been stumbling through processes of engagement. Yeah, but perhaps that's a good thing. Perhaps that's you know, we're all, it's a leveler, and there is perhaps another generation that are much more effective in the use of these tools, and therefore that's progressive in itself. But do these tools widen the community, or is it a process of you know, actually just cutting people out through a different mechanism?
Well, that's a really interesting question, Clive, because also there's people who have access to it. There's a very fundamentally basic qualities issue there as well, which I think is really going to be really important, talking about the digital divide, but just connecting back to to that comment, I've joined webinars, meets. I've probably been talking to my father in New Zealand more than I used to doing a quiz. So I think there has been a sort of, I think, greater connectivity with, so that there are benefits, but I think it is murky in terms of, as you said, intergenerational use and people having access, and also things that people value. One thing I really value about conferences is sort of on the side chat. So I've been arranging just random coffee and Zoom things with people, and that's been brilliant. So yes, to see James he's been to virtually 50 different virtual events. Yep, I think I'm probably heading up there as well. Thanks.
Not at the same time, I hope. Yeah, Joe, what's your feeling about that?
For me, I think it's one of the reasons why we launched the Digital Resilience Fund, is because we recognise that there are lots of people out there that don't have the equipment needed to connect. Of course, it's part of a major problem around skills and capacity as well. You'll see from the graph that I kind of flashed up at the pie chart in my presentation, that the vast majority of museums, galleries in Scotland are volunteer-led or independent, and there is a real issue around some of those age groups being able to access their digital capacity, expand their digital capacity properly. I was talking to a teacher the other day as well, and the number of children and young people that actually haven't got laptops or iPads is still a real issue. And how are they meant to learn from home, and how are they meant to manage blended learning should it happen? So there is a real issue around exclusivity that we shouldn't forget. And it's perhaps, I think heritage organisations and funders have a real opportunity here to work together to really encourage a step change. And one of the things I've really noticed in the past, I don't know, month or two, has been the proliferation of people wanting to support digital in some way. And everybody's, lots of funds out there for people that want digital, whatever that might be, but there's no coordination. And that would be a really powerful mechanism to combat some of that exclusivity that I've just been talking about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've actually only got just under 5 minutes. And there's a really great question that's just come in, which feels entirely relevant to the people that we've got in the conversation. I don't have an answer to it, but how are stories of COVID-19 being collected, documented, captured by the heritage sector in Scotland? I feel creative industries could help through our digital expertise and then utilise these resources. This is a really interesting one, because I've been quite involved in lots of the processes that are about trying to get hardship money out the door, and I am seeing processes being delivered in 1/10 of the time they would normally take, and huge corners being cut in what might normally be, the design of processes and the management and recording of those processes, and it does feel like that kind of fog of war situation, when we will come to the other side of this and go, what actually happened there? Does anybody really know what's happening? Do you have anyone looking at this from a museums or historic environment perspective?
I've heard of individual, if see Sandra's put some stuff up, I've heard of individual museums and organisations who are doing things, but I think that's an absolutely fantastic question. And also with the connection to the creative industries in terms of taking it forward, because I mentioned before the challenge of the sort of ad hoc working that has developed, but that's definitely something that a more sort of collaborative approach could address.
Definitely. Joe, quick line on that as last 3 minutes.
We held a workshop on Friday around contemporary collecting around COVID, and that was really well attended actually. So we're happy to run that again or work in partnership to help others. So that would be a lovely thing to do, because there's obviously quite a lot of ethical considerations maybe around collecting at this time as well. So yes.
Yes. No, exactly. Okay. We're just coming to the end. Just wanted to thank everyone for joining us and engaging with the conversation. It's obviously raised quite a lot of interesting points that I think maybe we need to continue to discuss as going forward. I hope maybe they will form the discussion. Actually, it's a real shame. I think Dr. G has talked about meetings, picnic meetings. My experience, I think most years of XpoNorth are stumbling out of Eden Court and going and sit on the grass and actually having extensive conversations post these sessions. So unfortunately, we won't be able to do that. And I went outside yesterday to try and do a meeting in the sunshine and realised I couldn't see the screen on my laptop, so I had to come back indoors. So there are some practical considerations around all of this too. Thank you all for participating and joining with us. Apologies for my own inability to enter the room at the very beginning. And also I should apologise for my glasses. I'm wearing these because I don't have any other glasses at the moment, and I've broken my normally transparent pair. So yeah, apologies for that. So yeah, thanks to you all, and hopefully the conversation will continue through XpoNorth. Thanks to XpoNorth for hosting it. Bye for now.
Very much. Bye.